then you got to plan for profit. And that's the most important thing. And that's one thing that I've always been lucky. I've always done is I've always had some money that I planned into the budget, that I've had that little bit of profit that, is kind of carried me through when things are lean.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, our regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Fine Homebuilding Editorial Advisor Mike Guertin.
Hello.
And his staff carpenter, Addison Oliveira.
Hey, how you doing?
Producer Jeff Rose.
Hi.
Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can also leave feedback and ask questions there too. So I'm talking about this thing like it's been an entity for a long time, but this is the first time we've had the Pro Talk podcast on Fine Homebuilding, but it's something I hope to do once a week. And that's why I said it's a regular discussion. So you guys are our first official guests. The kind of impetus for this was Sean Van Dyke's discussion we had a few weeks back, but it made me think that we should do this all the time. So thank you both very much for being here.
Well, thanks for having us. I listened to that the podcast with Sean, and then you mentioning that you'd like to do a second podcast and doing one for the pros, and I just thought, slam dunk, great idea. So it sounds like you've already got a name for it.
What do you think of the name?
What is the name you just said? Pro Talk?
It's the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast.
Okay, yeah.
And you should say you like it because my wife came up with a name.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only other ones that kind of jump in there would be like ProPod or ProCast or something like that. But I think Pro Talk is in the same vein, so I think you got a home run there.
Well, we'll let the listeners weigh in on what they think too. But it sounded like a winner to me, and it was the best thing that I had heard. So we're going with it for now.
Well, it's a good idea. If you get some listeners who have other ideas, you might crowdsource the whole thing and come up with a better one.
Or a third podcast. Who knows?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Well, I'm delighted to have you all here. And are you guys healthy? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
I got allergies, but I don't know, Addison, have you had allergies recently?
Yeah. I've been getting hit with the pollen and everything, and definitely the dust in that basement. So I'm feeling the allergies for sure.
I've got Addison in an old basement scraping some old carpet adhesive off the floor so we can put tile down.
You don't like him, it seems.
Well, it's been raining here a lot, so we needed some stuff inside.
Yeah. And
now we can't get our respirator masks, so we're kind of, just wrapping a T-shirt around our face and dealing with it.
So there are some patterns for those who are handy with sewing machine that my wife found for folks who need some breathing protection. Admittedly, it's not ideal, but it's probably better than nothing. So if you want to get your sewing machine out, Mike, you might try that.
I am handy with it. I'll show you. Look at this. I don't know. You probably can't see my knee, but it's all little patches on my clothes. Addison laughs at me.
Yep. I think that's cool. I really do. So, have you guys had to change what you're doing? Have you had to change your work methods? Are you social distancing, or is what's going on in that regard?
We're lucky.
Yeah.
Because we're just the two of us, and then occasionally working with my brother, and all the work I had lined up was mostly outside work for the springtime. So, I mean, Addison and I, we see each other in the morning, and then usually we split up. Like, he's been running a backhoe all morning. I've been cutting the limbs, and he's been loading them. So, we keep our distance apart from each other.
I think there's a lot of folks in the construction business who have, for lack of a better description, limited contact with other people. So they're trying to keep going. And I don't think it's a bad idea, assuming they have projects and are taking some precautions.
Exactly. And here, I know some states have pretty much told everybody to stay at home, but here in Rhode Island, and I know a few other states, construction work has been considered critical workers.
Yeah.
So when I drive down the road, I see, a lot of the heavy commercial road construction, bridge construction. And I look and, it's noticeable. The people, instead of congregating around like a little fire or having a coffee break, they're all spread out and you
Yeah.
never see them grouping together. So simple things like that can keep them apart and they can keep working.
And the epidemiologist tells us that we should just be outside as much as possible and, away from other.
Mhm.
It seems like a way to be lucky in the construction business, if you could say that.
There is a bright side to anything right now, right?
Yeah. So what you guys said you were working on the basement to get ready for tile. Any other projects? It sounded like you're doing some land clearing, Mike. And it sounded like in a previous conversation we had, you're getting ready to build a spec home. Is that right?
So let's see, what do we got going right now? I don't know, Addison, why don't you give them a rundown of the things we've done in the last couple of weeks? You probably have a better memory of it than I do.
Yeah. So basically, we just finished up the deck, running all the new decking and all the new
That's right.
cables and tensioning all those. And we finished up probably a week and a half ago, just picking at it because of the weather, like Mike had said. So all the rainy days, we were kind of going over to the basement, just getting it all prepped and figuring out how to pull up the old click lock flooring, which Mike had made a post about. So we really just been prepping the basement on all the rainy days. But now that the deck's all finished, now kind of just picking at the basement. But instead of doing it on the rainy days, we still kind of are, because we're using the nice day like today where it's getting to 60 to go out and cut some trees and play outside instead of being stuck in the basement.
Right.
So I've got 6 rental properties plus my mother who lives next door to me, or actually us, because Addison lives nearby as well. She's got a lot of deferred maintenance and plus all my rental houses. So we're just jumping on those things as to keep us outside when we can.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully next week, my brother has us siding a house. So the 3 of us will be out there doing that. He'll be the cut guy on the ground, and then I'll be on one side of the house, and Addison will be on the high staging on another side of the house because he likes working up in the high spots.
Yep.
That's what the young guy is for.
Yeah.
Mike, I'm sure you've recalled in your long career other instances where the residential building economy took a severe hit, right? Anyone who's been in the industry for any time remembers, different situations where this happens when everything grinds to a halt. Can you please tell me those instances in the past and how you survived and what you learned from those situations?
I don't know if they're good. And I don't know if they're good examples of what we're going through now. They were a lot different because all of those were economic problems, not a health crisis. With the virus, where we're forced to stop working where the economy was working. So I don't know what's going to be different. But yeah, I mean, I started in the mid to late 70s that's when we had first it was stagflation. No, wait, was it stagflation? Yeah, first it was stagflation. Then it was all of the to fix that. Then the Fed went and increased interest rates. So that was right through the early 80s. Remember, interest rates were, and people today at 3% or so, 3.5%, it's free money. Essentially, back then we were paying 10 to 18% for interest on loans. So when we were trying to build houses then, or even for homeowners trying to get financing for things, it was just out of reach for most people. So that was my entry into the business, was during an economic downturn. Then I think then things boomed in the mid 80s, but then 87 with Black Friday crashed. And then around where we are in Rhode Island, Addison's like, man, everything I'm going to tell you, Addison, has all been before you were born.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I can't recall.
This is a history lesson on economic downturns in the construction business, because construction always took a nosedive early in all of these and was always late to come out of these things. But then when it did come out, like during the late 80s, mid 80s, I should say, it was a big building boom. And then, with the economic, then there was Black Friday, the stock market went down, then everything contracted. And layered on top of that, that would have been 87, 88, 89. And then locally, we had a similar event to what was the savings and loan crisis in a few spots around the country. We had a a similar thing here in Rhode Island, which basically kept us uh, crushed our economy here till about 91 or 92. So that was, like about a 5-year period where we were down. And then we boomed in the 90s till about 2000. And then we got the double thing with .com crash and then 9/11 right
Y2K,
after that.
and then
And then it started coming up and then we hit the Great Recession. So it's like 5 years out of business, with slow economic times, 5 or 6 years good, and then it just keeps flip-flopping back and forth. So this isn't unusual in that regard, but it's a little different. I wonder how things are going to be able to be ramped back up is the real thing. I mean, there was plenty of work out there. I mean, we still have plenty of work, but I mean, from friends of mine and other people in the business in the area, I know they all had tons of work going into about a month ago. And then homeowners just basically said, I either can't go forward because I don't want you working in my house, or I can't go forward because I'm worried about my
money.
job and
Yeah.
being able to pay for the work and pay for the loan we just took out or are about to take out.
So when you said that this is a different occurrence, I totally agree with you. But I think some of the same factors are at work. In the Great Recession, I first started hearing about home equity lines of credit immediately evaporating, and work just stopped because all of a sudden where people were either couldn't get any money or they were scared to spend the money they had because they didn't know what was going to happen with the economy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's uncertainty is the biggest thing, is the biggest factor. But as far as getting through it, I have, except for, a couple of months here and there throughout from the 70s right on till today, I've never not had something going to do. It's just a matter of either luck or being well known or just deciding that, being a spec home builder, a custom home builder, I have to put that aside and I jump in and do, replacing gutters or doing some, not so, fancy work, just kind of
Fixing stuff.
bills. Don't have such a high regard for the work I have to have for any prestige. It's mostly just working for work.
Yeah. Got to pay the bills.
Pretty much.
So you just mentioned it a little bit. So you have some diversity in your business. You fix stuff when you need to. You do work for family members. You have your rental properties. You present at these industry trade shows. How did you get diversified? And do you have any advice for folks who would like to have more streams of income so you didn't have to be so reliant on clients and their willingness to spend money for their projects?
I think for most people, they're going to end up having. When I was younger, my only stream of income was the work I did for clients or for other contractors as a subcontractor. That only changed as I got older, earned a lot more money, and then was able to do investing in properties, because that's really where my the buffer work, I should say, like right now with a few of the things Addison and I are doing, they're on my rental properties. But it's only because I had that financial buffer that a lot of people don't have. That's something I teach a class that anybody who wants to be a contractor in Rhode Island has to take this 5-hour class that I teach. And we have to cover these prescribed areas of content that the state gives us. And one of them is business practices and principles. And one of the things I talk about is, and it's stuff that Sean Van Dyke talks about all the time in both his books and in his presentations. It's, you got to plan for your job site cost, the direct cost for a job. Then you have your overhead and markup, and then you got to plan for profit. And that's the most important thing. And that's one thing that I've always been lucky. I've always done is I've always had some money that I planned into the budget, that I've had that little bit of profit that, is kind of carried me through when things are lean, because I didn't go and spend that profit on, buying new tools or a new truck. I kept it in a little rainy day fund, so that ended up being the money that I used to buy properties and then do house flips and other things like that. but it takes time to get there. You got, a little bit of profit each year. It's got to build up. So you need to build up kind of a war chest in that way, or a nest egg, I guess you could say, rather than living beyond your means.
Yeah. So a lot of us in the building industry, or have spent time in the building industry, see rental properties as a very attractive way to make additional income, right? We already have the skill set and the connections to take care of these buildings. You often get the jump on purchasing them because you know people in the industry, but I bet it's fraught with peril. Have you had bad experiences, good experiences? Do you have any advice for contractors who were thinking about attacking this?
I get asked this question all the time. There's no one secret magic, way to do it. Because friends of mine and relatives of mine have done the same thing with rental properties, and we've each done it a little different way. Some people go big, buying big projects. I like to keep it local. All of my rental properties are houses that are within walking distance of my house, and it's just from neighbors that I've known for years. And when they're about to sell, I've been able to buy them at a good price. And I know the property. That's another important thing, knowing,
What you're getting into.
Yeah, what you're getting into. The year that it was built. How the neighborhoods were built. So whether you're buying a problem or you're buying something that has good bones that you can work with. So it's just, you got to know your market too. That's one thing that you can't just dive into a city or town that you're not familiar with without doing your homework, because you got to know what what you can get for rent, what level of expectations people have for interior finishes and yards and things like that. You need to know what's attractive. And then I guess where most people end up having problems with rentals is with the tenants they get. And I've been lucky there that I always tell the tenants, I'm going to be pickier about you than you are about this house, and I'll wait an extra month or two and let a place go vacant, just so I don't get a tenant that I'm questioning what how good they're going to be to the house. And so far, all but one of my tenants, they treat the house as if it's their own. In fact, they end up doing more improvements even, on it themselves. And I just say, I'll pay for all the materials if you want to do X, Y, or Z. And it's worked out pretty good that way.
Do you have, do you check their credit worthiness? Do you have some kind of application process before you take on a tenant?
Yeah. And I'm upfront with people. I say, a lot of people that I find that are the best tenants are the people who owned houses before. And for some reason, they just, lost a job or something, and they had to short sell their house, or they couldn't keep up with the payments, so they had to sell the house. So they already have a good mindset about what it's like to own a house and maintaining a house and keeping a house up. So those are the people I find best. Even if they have a bad credit report, as long as they tell me ahead of time, then I'm aware of it. Then we're just getting the basics on the credit report. We already know what we're going to look at. And my wife just uses an online system to pull a credit report, and it gives us enough of the information we need to feel confident that they'll be able to pay their bills.
Addison, there's a lot of young people who have currently lost jobs in especially the service sector, restaurant and hotel businesses and this kind of stuff. When Sean Van Dyke was on, he was saying that a lot of these people, when they re-enter the job market, are going to be attracted to construction for some of the reasons we identified earlier, that in some cases you can keep on working. Right. And also the service industry is fraught with its own troubles, right? There's oftentimes you get limited benefits. People are not nice to you.
Right.
What would you say to those folks who might be considering a job in construction, who are your age or close to your age? What would you say to them?
Well, like you had mentioned, a lot of my buddies or friends are getting laid off now because of the whole crisis. And a lot of them are servers at restaurants, or some work at jewelry stores, movie theaters. And like you had said, they all get sent home and they don't really know what to do. And they're kind of scared to go back to work because now they don't know what they're going to be facing.
Yeah.
Going to work, dealing with people, money, interacting. One of my brothers work at a liquor store, and they're still open in Rhode Island, so he's constantly talking to people and transactioning money back and forth, cards. Yeah, and it's like even after this crisis goes away, who knows how strict all the stores and everywhere is going to be now. In carpentry, you kind of have a little bit more freedom where, like Mike had said, we go over a project or what the plan is for the day, and then we kind of just split off, and you get your little section and job, and then the other person gets their task, and you kind of just go off, and you don't really interact with many people. So I mean, it's very healthy for you. Like Mike had also mentioned, we're outside. You're and you had mentioned as well. You're outside. That's the best place to be. You're constantly breathing in fresh air, not cramped into one building with a whole bunch of other employees. And it's a workout. I mean, we're moving trees today. I was moving tiles the other day in the basement. I mean, you're still inside in a maybe a moldy or damp basement, but you're carrying tiles all around, moving all the flooring out, scraping. You're breaking a sweat, scraping the floor. Like you're still working. You're still pushing your body and keeping it healthy, not just sitting at a computer desk or sitting at a cash register exchanging your arms with money. Like I just feel like that's not what we want, what people want to do. People want to go out and actually use their bodies.
I think that's cool. When you were describing working like that, I think a lot of people would have said, well, what's the good part?
Well, I mean, like I said, all my brothers are laid off now, and they're all, oh, I'm so bored. All I'm doing is playing video games. And I was like, let's go out and split some wood. So that's what we did when I went after I left Mike's house yesterday. We went home, split some firewood, and had a little campfire. And they were all so for it.
You actually got them to do something?
That's what I'm saying. But we got home, and they were like, yeah, we don't want to just sit in the house. I was like, it's beautiful. Let's go do something.
Oh,
I think that's awesome. Another thing Sean Van Dyke said is that during this period, right, to make ourselves more employable, given the vagaries of the economy right now, we should all be teaching ourselves something or learning something new. I'm going to ask you, Addison, are you doing that?
Well,
and if so, what?
Well, Mike has always had his own gardens, always grown his own vegetables, and tried to get as much out of it as he can. And I was always fascinated in that, but never really dipped my foot into the pool, you know? So now I'm really going to try to get into that because it's great to grow your own vegetables and kind of have cut off half your grocery list just because it's in your backyard. That's
Amen.
One less thing you even have to go and get.
And the food is way better. I guarantee it.
Way better. So much fresher. Even having chickens. I know it sounds crazy having a little chicken coop and having eggs, but you can get your meat there and eggs. I mean, what else do you really need at the grocery store besides little things like condiments and silly
Reese's
stuff?
cups.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike? What are you doing? You're always learning anyway. What are you studying besides the podcast?
You know, every day my father told me this when I was younger, when I thought I knew it all. He goes, oh, you don't know anything yet. You'll find when you get older, you'll find out you know less than you thought you knew. And I find that's more and more and more the case. So I just bump up against something, and between having a computer and internet connection or just reading magazines and things, I'm picking up more and more faster, better, simpler, smarter, different ways of doing things. You know, even just following different people on Instagram and watching their technique for doing something, even though I may not agree with it, there's usually a little nugget of something in everybody's, method or practice that you can pick up and glean something from. Regularly, I just get, JLC, and I get Fine Homebuilding, and I get about 4 other magazines. I used to get about 23 or 24 magazines a month. A lot of people don't realize that people in construction don't realize that there are so many free construction related magazines out there that you can get delivered to your door, or you can, read them on their website for free. And a lot of them are trade specific. There's like a tile magazine, or like walls and ceilings for the plaster and stucco and painting industry. And then there's, professional remodeler, remodeling, and then there's qualified remodeler. So just in the remodeling business right there's 3 major magazines, and you can go on and on and on. Is search those out, and look them up is be my recommendation to people, because not 2/3 of it isn't going to be applicable for you, but it's going to be that one article that you look at and it just clicks something in your head, either to help you do what you do better, to plan, if you are, say, a tile setter or a drywall hanger, you learn a technique or something that you can employ on jobs, or take a drywall, for instance. Everybody sticks with the standard, just tape over regular board. Well, there are a lot of other systems out there for putting, like, I won't say exotic, but decorative finishes on drywall. And if you can learn those extra techniques, it makes you more valuable to a contractor who is building higher end homes, who has designers or architects involved in the project, where they want to have an accent wall or a room with a different type of finish. So you'd be able to do that instead of just doing the grunt work that most people default to. And that would be the same for flooring. It'd be the same for roofing. It'd be the same for siding. You take it, you take any of those sub trades if people are specializing in, and learn different aspects that can expand your variety and diversity within your chosen part of a sub trade. So I could go on and on about this, because
I love it. So
talk with people about this stuff all the time.
What are your favorite YouTube channels or YouTube presenters? Who do you like on there?
I don't know any of them by name, really. I just go and search for a particular one. You have to have a good poke and sniffer, because some people put stuff out that's just completely bogus, and you gotta have a good sense of what's valuable, what's useful, what is actually practical, and then just putting in the right search terms and then finding it. That's one of the things I like about magazines, even if they're online magazines, because I know there's usually an editor there, and that's one thing that this direct to peer-to-peer communication with YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all these other social media platforms. Peer-to-peer, you don't have a third party that's involved, a third person who's kind of pre-vetting it. I know I've been called to task a lot of times by editors at Fine Homebuilding and JLC saying, "Are you sure that's right?" When I write something, and then I have to go back and do my homework, and only to find out I've did something wrong, or I'm just about to make a big mistake and tell people some misinformation. So that's why I usually look to these sources that do have some sort of a third person in there, an editor of some sort.
I'd tell you that's terrifying, but hey.
How is it terrifying?
Because I'm the editor.
Well, it's, and you've second questioned me, and Martin's always questioning me and my contentions, and Matt and Justin. And I think that's good, because otherwise, if you didn't ask, then you're asking essentially the questions that a savvy reader is going to ask.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
I loved doing this. Was such a pleasure having you guys on the show. I mean, it was. I hope it was enjoyable for you as it was for me.
Yeah, for sure.
That's short.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're trying to make this a little shorter, because people have work to do.
Yeah, but both Addison and I, we're earplugs all day. We never talk to one another, because he's listening to podcasts, I'm listening to podcasts. A lot of people in construction now, they're using these podcasts both as, instead of listening to a radio program. So
for sure,
it gives us a little more information while you're out there working.
That's cool. So we'll tell all your friends, because it is the new medium for sure, right?
Yeah, it is.
Well, thanks for having us.
It was my pleasure. So who do you guys think I should have on the show next? So Brian Euler of Pioneer Builders in Port Orchard, Washington has offered, and I'd love to take him up on that. So I'm going to try and have him on next. But after that, who do we have on here?
I'll have to email you, because I'm not good at thinking on my feet like that.
Well, I'll ask the rest of you who are listening too. Tell us who you think we should have on the show, and I will try and get him on.
Good.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thanks for Mike, Addison, and Jeff for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our new Pro Talk podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. Stay safe.